A very good evening to you, our listener out there. And once again, I would just like to welcome you to this very weekly program goes by the name Face the Mic. And today here, I'm very much honored to have with me Professor Dr. Peter Baofu, an American scholar and writer who has so far written 148 books, whereby by next week, something surprising is that it's going to have 150 books exactly. Dr. Peter Baofu, you're warmly welcome.
Thank you for inviting me.
Well, this is TBC International Studio, and as I said earlier, that we are so much honored to have you in the studio here.
And thank you for...
Yes, my name is Deo Salufu. I'm going to be with you all the way to 4 o'clock East African time. And you, our listener out there, you'll have time to at least participate on this particular program. And the number is 0712014868. And you will be participating via text message. Well, now down to the business. Professor Dr. Peter Baofu, you are now in Tanzania. And first and foremost, people would like to know, yes, they know that you're a professor and doctor, but who you are, the background, I mean.
Let me first clarify my name, because people sometimes have some problem with that. My first name is spelled Peter, P-E-T-E-R, and my last name is Baofu, which is spelled B as a boy, A as an apple, O as onion, F as Frank, and U as union, so B-A-O-F-U. Now, you asked a very interesting question, who I am. How can I introduce myself? Well, as you just said, I'm from the U.S. and I have written 148 books and soon 150 in relation to the mind, nature, society, and culture, which means all my books are in all fields of knowledge, in the social sciences, the natural sciences, the humanities, and the formal sciences. And I have proposed so far 115, soon next week 116 new visions and theories of the future in relation to the mind, again, nature, society, and culture. And 116 theories, and 3 of these 116 theories and visions are about the unified theories of everything. So that is a very comprehensive visions of the future in all fields of knowledge, and that is historically unprecedented for a massive project. And of course, we are now in Tanzania, and people ask me, why am I here? The reason I'm here is because I'm in a global tour. I have been in more than 95 countries so far, and by the end of this year, in the next few months, I shall be in more than 100 countries. And in order to understand the situation and to live with the local people, to understand totality in terms on the ground as a whole.
Well, very interesting background. Now, down to the business. You've said that you've been able to come up with 115 new theories and visions of the future. Why these so many new theories?
That's a very good question, because in the history of ideas, time again and again, we have seen a lot of thinkers and writers. They come up with some new ideas, often only one vision, one theory, and they use that theory to comprehensively understand about everything. Let me give you some examples. One of the most famous examples nowadays in the history of the Cold War is the notion of Marxism by Karl Marx, or the notion, in this case, in this country, you have a lot of people who believe in Christian religion, Christianity by Jesus Christ, for example, his ideas. And in the East, you have Buddha, for example, or you have Mohammed for those countries which are in the Islamic religion. So many of them, in one way or the other, has some visions, but that is a one single theory which is used to explain about everything else. Marx, for example, in this case, class struggle is the central core of his theory. And time and again, this is a mistake. because the reality in the universe and in the world is very complicated. Every time when you try to come up with one theory, dominant theory, a paradigm to understand everything, sooner or later you will understand it doesn't work that way. And the world is so complicated that more than one theory is needed. In fact, I have proposed three, as I said before, three unified theories of everything. And that, even after three of them, are not sufficient. So the answer is the world is much more complicated, and therefore you need more than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on. In fact, 116 is not even sufficient in the end, but I'm still discovering. Now, I say this because there's another reason that's also very important too, is that at the end of the Cold War, a lot of people in the West, especially, let's say, in America, they believe that somehow democracy and capitalism are the highest achievements. And that's why we talk about the end of ideas, the end of history, which means for them that somehow we have reached that climax of human civilization and history, such that all the major ideas in the center, in this case, capitalism and democracy, as the highest achievements of human history. One is in politics, the other one is in economics. And I'm trying to tell them that we are not near the end yet. In fact, we are only at the beginning to come with some new ideas about the future. That is why I'm challenging, behind these visions that I'm proposing, I'm challenging all the fundamental conventional wisdoms that we believe in. And this is so profound in the project.
Well, you've said that so far you've just come up with new 115 new theories. But could you just please mention a few of them? Yes.
Let me mention some of them that people like to talk to me a lot, because those are the popular ones. The one that I just gave you already is the notion nowadays that a lot of people believe in democracy and capitalism, and they think that that is the highest achievements in economics and politics. There can be no other political and economic system which can be better than something which is democratic and something which is capitalistic. That's why at the end of the Cold War, you have the ideology in the U.S., especially in the U.S., but also in the West in general, that somehow those are the highest achievements, especially in relation to liberal democracy and market capitalism. And that's what they call that the end of ideas, the end of history. We reached the point, such an achievement, so tremendous, that America stands for the height of that achievement. That's why American civilization is the future civilization in this case. So I'm challenged that is a, by the way, post-Cold War American propaganda, by the way, just in case you do not know, that is a propaganda. And I'm challenging that post-Cold War propaganda, that is not true at all in academia and also elsewhere. And this is why some of these ideas are so profound in that case. You asked for the example. These are two examples. Another example that I also challenge to is the notion somehow that the American century will last. I am arguing many years ago that the U.S. could be in decline and China could emerge as the dominant superpower on Earth. I remember that when I wrote my dissertation at MIT, where I get my PhD, in 1995, more than 20-something years ago, and people just laughed at me when I gave some presentation about that. And now no one laughs at me anymore. They argue with me, but that's the improvement. Before, they just totally dismissed me altogether. But now they don't do that anymore, but they keep arguing with me. At least there's an improvement. That means that they take me seriously now.
Well, once again, I have to say, very interesting. Well, out of those 115 theories, the new theories actually, you came up with something that sound very, very unique, the unified theories of everything. What are they all about?
Okay. Here is another theory. So one is post-capitalism, that's one theory. Another one is post-democracy, the second theory. And the third one is the notion of hyper-empire that I just mentioned, the emergence of China, India, and all that. That's the third theory. Another theory of mine, and I propose three of them, is about the unified theories of everything. That is about theory before theory. The reason is because every time when we understand reality, we are using a lot of hypotheses and theories to understand them. But theories and hypotheses are not innocent. They presuppose certain assumptions, certain realities, certain ontologies, certain methods. So I'm proposing that to understand that is to ask the question and to reach deeper into the understanding of that reality. Then we go into meta theory. Theory before theory. And that is exactly what the unified theories are supposed to understand. Just in case you get confused, I'm not talking about the unified theory of everything in physics. Now, that is a confusion here. What I'm doing has nothing to do with the unified theory in physics. The unified theory in physics is a specific theory. This is to apply to physics. My theory is even more profound than that. It's not about physics. It's about everything in the entire universe, whether you talk about sexuality or politics or mathematics or cosmology or urban planning or a furniture or a video or a film or a terraform, whatever that is. I think there are some fundamental principles which govern all of them for us to understand. And for example, one of the unified theories is what I call existential dialectics, in which I propose more than 70 principles so far to understand what those fundamental realities are like behind theory. So that is another one. I know this is getting very complicated, but since you asked, I propose them. Now you understand how come one theory is not sufficient. Each field requires you to have some understanding of the future. You do no justice to scholarship if you simplify everything and try to come up with theory and say that is going to explain everything, like I just told you, class struggle in Marxism. That's a good example. Freudian analysis in psychoanalysis, another example. I reject all of this. It doesn't work that way in reality. Now you can see slowly why you need so many more. And we are only at the beginning. Don't think that we are near the end of ideas. And in fact, I have proposed 116 so far, soon by next week. That's only the beginning. I want to show the world we are not at the end of ideas. We are only at the beginning. In fact, there's only 116. Who knows how many more that I can propose? And who knows how many 100,000 and 1,000 more that people will propose in the future.
And since we are
exciting,
not,
isn't it?
Since we are not at the end of the world, then more theories will be coming up. Well, we know that a theory is a contemplative and rational type of abstract or generalizing thinking. Now, how have your theories, the new theories, been helpful to the society?
I think that is a common misunderstanding that somehow theory has to be theoretical. No. In many of the hypotheses or theories that I have proposed, I link them to the empirical reality, and that's why I'm on a global tour right now to understand humanity. Why do I spend time going to Tanzania or to other countries? If I care only about ideas in the abstraction, I could just sit at home. Why do I come here? Why do I have to talk to people? Why do I have to interact with them? Because you have to understand reality on the ground. It's not sufficient for you to read a book or to watch a film or to study something in a library and then write a book about it, as many professors do, by the way. But I avoid them because I think that you need to reach the ground. Now we understand what exactly is going on, not just in relation to theory, but how it has been applied. In fact, in many of the books that I have written so far, when I propose a theory, all of them have practical implications, and they are happening already. It's not just a fantasy or abstract speculation, including what I said about post-democracy and post-capitalism. They are happening right now, but they are slowly, gradually, and more is going to happen in the future. China is a good example that I just mentioned.
So, in other words, you want to say that you are a different theorist in comparison with the other theorists.
I don't make the distinction between let's say theory versus reality. I think that's an important dichotomy, but in the end I'm trying to combine them together. That you have no theory without practice and no practice without theory. that is my way of understanding things in that case, and that is very unique in a way. And that's why I don't make the distinction in terms of this theory that's not reality or not practice. I think in the end, and I argue in my publication, that in human history, and what I propose so far is that there's no theory without practice and no practice without theory in the end. And what I'm proposing in all of those theories, they are happening already, but slowly.
Well, so far, you've already visited more than 95 countries around the world. And by next week or next month, God willing, maybe you'll have a total of 100 countries to be visited by you. Now, I just want to know, is there any relation between you visiting such a big number of countries around the world and having a big number of new theories?
That's also a very good question. Let me answer that in two ways. That is so important, your question in terms of what I'm doing. That's why I'm doing something so unusual, so extraordinary that no human being on earth in terms of being a scholar has done something like that. Many people, when they have written a book, normally they spend a lot of time, especially when they are professors in the library. In the older days, many of those people never traveled around the world in order to understand, to propose something new. And even when they do, they only go to one country, two countries, and specialize in so and so and so. And what I'm doing is something tremendous in the sense, I said to myself that I would like to travel around the world, not just in one culture, one country, or one ethnic group, or one race, in all of them with no exception. And this is a massive project. So in the end, what I'm trying to understand is that how different cultures, different society, and different people on earth have been sharing, but at the same time are also very distinguished from each other. And in that sense, you understand reality in a different way. And this is one of the things that a lot of people, especially in this case in the West, where I'm from, but also in many other countries on earth, they have been committing one mistake, which is very tremendous, is that they tend to look at the world from the perspective of their own culture, their own society, their own nationality, their own education, and project that into the rest of the world. And this is, by the way, is a common mistake made by many Americans nowadays. And I think that this is a very grave and serious mistake in scholarship. And you ask another question, is there another relationship between the number of the theories and the number of the countries that I have visited?
Yes.
I think that there is a correlation, because the more countries that you have explored and lived, I'm not talking about visiting a country for 1 day and 2 days. You go to the museum, you take a picture of yourself, and you send a picture home and say, Mom, I'm now in Tanzania, here's my picture. I'm not talking about this kind of visit. This is just for tourism. I'm talking about serious visit to understand a culture, a society. You just put yourself into the life and culture of another people and try to understand them, interact them, and come with some new understanding about that. I'm talking about this kind of visit, not like a tourist visit. And in that sense, the more you travel like that, the more you explore, the more your ideas can be more productive and more prolific. Yes, I do think there's a correlation. In fact, not only that, I do think that in the end, the more you visit, the higher your intelligence is going to be too. You become smarter in a certain way, because you will see things in a multiple perspective that you could not see before. After spending all this time in other countries now, whatever topic that you can share with me, I can see things in many, many perspectives that I could not before when I was at home, when I was younger. So that is a tremendous correlation. Not only that, but much more than that.
So this is to say that out of your tour or your visit to different societies and exploring their culture and stuff like that, that's where also you develop some new theories, correct?
Yes, but it's not just. By the way, this another question people ask me a lot too, but you did not ask. But let me answer them here anyway, because it's related. You also need something else, which is about you. You need to have an unusual mind too. That is genetic. You cannot just say anyone can just go to many countries and you expect the person to be, by the end of that trip to 100 countries, he become a tremendous scholar and thinker. It doesn't work out that way. You need to have unusual mind. If you do not have that, even if you repeat what I do 1,000 times, you still will not produce. So there's another part of that which is individual, which is genetic. Look at me. Do you know Muhammad Ali, the boxer?
Oh, yes.
Okay. I'm not a boxer. I'm not a boxer. Even if I spend 1,000 hours boxing like Muhammad Ali, in the end, I shall not be Muhammad Ali. You understand me?
Yes,
so even if you repeat what I do, you go to 100 countries, will you be Peter Baofu and produce 116 new visions of the future? The answer is no.
A very big no.
Yeah. You can produce more or less, but you will not be 115 unless you have that unusual mind too.
Well, I know culture is a total way of life of a particular society.
Yes.
And you have been going to different places just to get to see and get to know their culture and stuff like that. But I know some cultures, once you look at them and once you see the way people behave, I don't know what to say, but they are very, very surprising. Now, I want just to know, how do you manage to adapt new culture, especially when you go to all those different, places or countries?
Yeah, by the way, this is a very interesting question for those people in anthropology. I have written a book on anthropology too, so I'm quite aware of this kind of question. Let me answer your question this way. If you ask me this question at the beginning, let's say 20 years ago or 30 years ago, my answer could be that, yeah, it was very difficult for me. I remember that I did not finish 100 countries only in the last 4 weeks. I've been doing this for more than a few decades already, so I'm on and off. It's not that I finished in the last few weeks. So at the beginning, it was very difficult for me. You will encounter some cases where you simply cannot adapt because you are just very different from the cultures that you have been put in. But on the other hand, I think that is also a question of experience and individual ability. The more time and travel that you have done, I think that sooner or later the more you will be able to adapt to many different countries, even if you do not approve what they do. So that's the good news. On the other hand, it also depends on your own individual ability. Some people are much more able to adapt than some others. Again, part of that is cultural, part of that is social, part of that is natural, but the other part, as I said before, is individual, in this case, genetic also. Some people are just better in doing certain things, just like boxing or doing mathematics. So don't expect everyone that go to 100 countries, but at the end of that 100 countries, you will be an amazing adaptive person. It doesn't work out like that. There are some people I know, they have been in many countries, but at the end of their trip, they think like what they thought before. They seldom change. In fact, they keep cursing those people that they have visited. They cannot adapt. I have met some people like that. So the good news, the bad news are there. So it's not a question so simple that...
Well, dear TBC International listener, just in case you're joining us, the program on air is Face the Mic, a weekly program that comes to you every Friday from 3 to 4 p.m. East African time. And today, in a very special way, I have here in the studio none other than Professor Dr. Peter Baofu, an American scholar and writer who has so far written 148 books and has also visited 95 countries around the world. And just in case you have anything, be it question, be it comment or any take pertaining to whatever we are talking here, because we're trying our best to touch different angles, because he's a man full of theories, full of knowledge and everything. So just in case you have anything pertaining to what we are talking about here, be not hesitant. You can just interact with us here via text message on 0712014868. I repeat, 0712014868. Well, down to the business, you've so far written more than 100 books since you are a writer, and you have proved that you are truly a writer. What are all those books about?
They are very comprehensive. They are in relation to the mind, nature, society, and culture. Now, you might think there's only 4 categories. Within each category, I subdivide that further. For example, in relation to culture, you can talk about ideology, you can talk about language, you can talk about religion, you can talk about sports, you can talk about history, you can talk about entertainment, you can talk about, so there's so many other issues. On each of them, I have written a book about that. In the social sciences, for example, in relation to society, you can talk about, let's say, politics, economics, you can talk about sociology, you can talk about communication, you can talk about warfare, you can talk about intelligence studies, you can talk about military studies, you can talk about the law and so on, education, healthcare, and all that. So those are, and on each of them, I have also written a book. In relation to nature, you can talk about physics, chemistry, biology, engineering, earth sciences, and so forth. I have also written books on all of them. In relation to the mind, you can talk about consciousness, unconsciousness, creativity, or sexuality, or many other things. I have also written books on all of them. So within each category, you can subdivide that further into subfields of knowledge. In fact, to reclassify them, I have written all this book in relation to the social sciences, the natural sciences, the humanities, and the formal sciences, which means in all fields of knowledge. So my project in a way is so unprecedented, it's so massive, and global in scale too, by the way, not just in one culture, one society, one region, and all that.
Okay. Talking of your book goes by the title, The Future of Post-Human Consciousness. Just an example.
Yes.
What is it all about?
Okay, there is also a book which I have written many years ago. In that book, I propose some new visions of the future. In this case, it's about consciousness in relation to the mind. This book is not about society, it's not about culture, it's not about nature, it's only about consciousness. It's more topic. So each book is about one topic. In this book, for example, I propose some new forms of consciousness in the future, such as I propose, let's say, floating consciousness and hyperspatial consciousness in the future, which means that the human mind, as we understand it, will not last. It will be replaced by different minds in the future. So these 2 theories that I just proposed, floating consciousness, hyperspatial consciousness, are just 2 examples of the emerging life forms in the future, in this case in relation to the mind and consciousness.
There was another book pertaining to religion, something like that, correct?
Yes, not just one, many.
Okay, so one of them.
For example, in one book which is called Beyond the World of Titans and the Remaking of World Order, I talk about different regions of the world and how they're going to change. What is the implication for international politics? And in that book, by the way, I wrote more than 20 years ago. I spoke about the decline of America at that time, because at that time the U.S. was at the peak of the post-Cold War era, where a lot of people thought that the Soviet Union was gone, so the U.S. is going to be forever like that. And I said that no, it's not Japan, it's not Russia, but it's China, which could become the dominant superpower to replace America, and India will be the next. I remember that at that time when I gave presentation like that, people just laugh at me. I mean, they just dismiss me totally. But they stopped doing that nowadays.
So what compelled you to come up with this kind of prophecy? For me, I can just call it as a prophecy, because as you say that when you were doing a presentation, some people were laughing at you as if you were talking something impossible. But for
you are lunatic, you are crazy.
Yes, illusion, you know. But for you, I think you came up with that saying which says, nothing impossible under the sun. So what compelled you to come up with this kind of prophecy?
Again, I was interviewed many times before, and people often ask me this question. As I said, there are 2 fundamental reasons One of them is genetic, the other one is environmental. Genetic is about your personal ability. No two individuals have the same ability. Just as I said, Muhammad Ali is extraordinary in boxing, but I'm not like that. I'm totally incapable of boxing like that. But on the other hand, there's something else that I do which is very good, and in that case, to be a thinker. So that is the unusual ability that you must have if you want to be a good thinker. You must have that kind of potential. Look at Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali had the physiology to be a great boxer. Muhammad Ali is not skinny, is not short. You need to have certain physiology to be a good boxer. Like his neck is a bit thicker than mine. He's bigger than I am. He's not as skinny as I am. So this is important. You want to play basketball well, you need to be very tall. By the way, Yao Ming from China, he's very tall. Okay, but how about me? Am I that tall? No, that's why I cannot be famous in basketball. But can I be famous in thinking, in scholarship? I think I do. So yes, so that's to answer your question. How can you come up with these ideas? You must have that ability. Now, another thing is environmental. I think that I have been benefiting from a very good academic environment because I was educated in the top schools in the world. I was also taught in some of them too.
Just to mention those schools.
Yeah, for example, I took a lot of courses. I also was teaching some courses at MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology,
In
at
America.
Harvard, yes, in the US. By the way, MIT and Harvard have been ranked as have the top two schools, not just in the US. We are talking about international ranking. And I was also at Johns Hopkins, Northwestern, Georgetown, and all that. And I was also benefited from a family background where I was encouraged by my family to receive or to pursue a career in scholarship. So that is very good for me in that sense. But going back to genetic too, is that I also have an unusual work ethics. I think that's also genetic too. I work like hell, by the way, just in case you do not know. When I work, I really work like from the beginning of the day to the end of the day. And I seldom have any distraction. And wherever I go, I often carry a computer with me. I work constantly. When I sleep, my mind works constantly. So it's not something that you say, it's very easy, just spend some time in Tanzania or visit 95 countries and you will come up with some new theory. It doesn't work like that. So there's a lot of tremendous sacrifices that you need to have. So yes, but I also have that thick skin that people laugh at me. It does not stop me. It does not discourage me. I'm not the kind of person that I'm afraid of people laughing at me. The more they laugh at me, the more I'm convinced that I'm right.
Well, dear TBC International listener, you've heard now as to why Professor Dr. Peter Baofu is coming up with all those new theories, or is one of the best theorists ever in the world. It's because also has studied in top universities and colleges. And for your information, according to this year research, there are some top universities here. The first one is Massachusetts, as you've said here, and also Stanford University and Harvard University. Yeah, so you deserve to be the way you are. There's a text message here.
Yes.
This is from Bravo Juma, a university student at St. Joseph University here in Dar es Salaam, and says he has a question, and his question is about what is the difference of the following terms: culture, creativity, economic, natural, and nature of people.
Repeat I think that's a translation problem here.
Okay. Let me just read as it is written here. My name is Bravo Juma from St. Joseph University here in Dar es Salaam. My question is, what are the difference of the following terms: culture, creativity, economic, nature of people, etc.
Natural what?
Nature of people.
nature of people.
Yes, when talking of nature of people.
Human nature, maybe.
Yes, human nature. Doesn't understand what is the meaning of it, and then culture and creativity.
That's a good question. By the way, just by listening to that question in translation, I think that something is lost in translation because of the English words.
Okay.
But I think that I have some rough idea what he's asking. I think he's asking about some terms, and that is about. Number one is about culture. Number two, economics. I think that's about the social sciences. And number three is about creativity. And number four is about human nature.
Yes.
So creativity and human nature is more about the mind. Economics is about society. Culture, in this case, is about culture. So my works, for example, have done in all of them. But his question is, what is the relationship between, let's say, creativity, human nature, and then economy and culture? That's a very interesting question. There are a lot of relationship between them. Let me give you some examples, but we can argue about this for hours about this. So let me make that very short. Creativity and human nature. First, I do think that there is a fundamental link between human nature and creativity. Human, by the way, have been much more creative than animals. I'm not trying to put down animals, but I'm just saying that if you compare a fish with humans, and what we have done so far in terms of creativity, creating a lot of things, are much more than a fish can do. Even though we are also trying to swim like a fish too. At MIT, by the way, because I'm from MIT, there are some people, they are trying to come up with trying to learn like a fish. And then why? Because they want to build a submarine which can run like a fish. Very business too. You open a shop in a corner, someone else also opened the same shop too in another corner. Now you are competing with that person, right? So who is going to win? Who is going to lose? Well, it depends on who is more creative in coming up with some new ways to make money. If you open a restaurant, it depends on what kind of food are you going to serve. How are you going to treat your customers? How are you going to finance yourself? Where do you get the capital? So it depends on which one is more creative in terms of coming up with all this kind of question, marketing, strategy, finance, and sales, and all that. So that is and in capitalistic development, you tend to have people who are much more creative than others. And this is a good question about culture, because I want to say something about Tanzania now, because just to intrigue your interest, because we are now in Tanzania. One observation that I made so far is that
what Tanzania is missing, according to your opinion, what do you think is Tanzania missing to the extent that it's having a lot of natural resources, is endowed with natural resources, but still among the poorest countries on earth?
Yes, I have written 2 major books on this very issue. One book is called The Future of Capitalism and Democracy. The second book is called Beyond Capitalism and Post-Capitalism, in which I talk about there's no wealth without poverty, and there's no poverty without wealth. Now, what do I mean by that?
There's no wealth
without... There's no wealth without poverty, and there's no poverty without wealth. So when he asks, or when I heard this question all the time, so it's not just about him, but many people that I spoke to often ask me this question, not just in Africa, by the way, also in many other countries, in Latin America, in the Middle East, in South Asia, and all that. I think that, let me start with 2 comments which can make him think one more time. I disagree that Africa is poor.
You disagree?
I disagree.
Completely?
Completely.
But what is the reason then that we are still
That's
poor?
why I'm trying to say next. I do think that Africa is very rich. And that's why the Europeans came to colonize you. If you are so poor, think about it. Why do you think the Europeans bother to come here and colonize you? A lot of resources. So in a way, that's not quite true that Africa is poor. Africa is very rich. When I was in different countries, for example, I often saw a lot of resources that the people have. And those resources are just everywhere in Africa. So Africa is very rich, but on the other hand, as I said before, Africa is also poor, as he said and someone else have said too. Now, why is that poor? I think there's a lot of answer to that in relation to 4 major categories of explanation that I just mentioned. Some of them are cultural problems, some of them are social problems.
Let's go slowly, Professor. The first reason as to why Africa is poor, or African countries are poor, is first, cultural reasons.
First, there are cultural reasons.
Cultural reasons.
Secondly, there are social reasons.
Social reasons.
Number 3, there are natural reasons.
Natural reasons.
And number 4, there are mental reasons.
Mental reasons.
So in relation to culture, society, nature, and the mind. And I explain all of this in my publications. So I just want to summarize this very quickly. I said that's a good question, but I do think that if you want to know why Tanzania or Africa in this case are poor, my answer is twofold. Number 1 is what I just said, that I disagree that Africa is poor. Africa is very rich in many ways. And the way of life here in Africa in many ways are even better than the way of life in America. The way of life in America is very stressful, for example. The way of life in Africa is very merry, easygoing kind of way of life, and that is not necessarily bad. Now the trade-off of that if you are merry-going and you don't work too much, that means that you will not earn a lot. But I think that is a question of value judgment here. The more you work, the more you earn, but at the same time, the more stressful you will be. You will see a lot of time constraint that you will suffer. So that is a value judgment. How much more do you want A, and how much more do you want to sacrifice B? That's a value judgment. People often say in Africa over here or in Tanzania, they always want to copy from the West, from Europe. Now they copy from China and all that. I think that America and Europe and all that, and China, they have a lot of successes, but they also have a lot of problems. If you copy them, don't think that you can just copy the good. You're always copying the problems that they have too. So I think there's a question of value judgment about the differences. And the second answer is what I just said. The explanations are fourfold in relation to the mind, nature, society, and culture. So how do you deal with this? In the end, that's the conclusion of my answer, is that it all depends on you and the government how to come up with some solution to address these 4 categories of problems that I just mentioned. And no 2 persons, no 2 groups, no 2 countries will answer the question in the same way. Back to the beginning of the interview again, you asked me about how are you successful in this, how can other people learn from you? I said that different people are different, just like Muhammad Ali and we are different from each other. But the same analogy, different groups, different countries, different governments will answer the same question that he asked in different way. You ask the same question in Tanzania, or you ask the same question in Egypt, you ask the same question, let's say, in South Africa, people will give you a different answer. In relation to the mind, culture, society, and nature again.
Well, so you've said that Tanzania and Africa at large is not poor.
That's why I said there's no wealth without poverty and no poverty without wealth. There are 2 answers to the question.
Yes, I got you very clear. I was just making it clear for the benefit of our listener out there. And you said something very important for me, that it is the country itself in cooperation with the government and the citizens who will decide on whether they should continue being poor or come out of poverty. Because basing on your explanations that it is our mindset, the mental, the
Yes.
mindset is one of the problems that makes us poor.
Uh-huh.
But now the only language we Tanzanians do speak now is that we want to get out of poverty. And there are so many measures taken to make sure that poverty becomes history. Now you as a theorist, how do you see? Shall we make it?
Yes, I do think that you can make it, but not in the sense that some people have in mind. That's why I try to challenge the conventional wisdom. I don't think that just by copying from China or the West or from America will give you the answer. No, it will not help you very much in the longer term. My challenge to the Tanzanian, whether government or NGO, whatever, but I don't want to pinpoint a person to attack one government or something like that. My point is that overall, in the end, it is important for the people here and the government over here to come up with a dialogue such that they can come to a consensus as to what exactly is that kind of combination and the value selection that I have in mind.
Okay, thank you.
And that they have to engage into that dialogue to come, and no one can give you the answer and say, this is the objective answer, take it because I said so. It doesn't work out that way.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, got you. But however, we are on the right track towards, making poverty history here in our country. No matter how long will it take, correct?
I don't put that in that kind of black or white category. I think that's very extreme. I do saw things. Again, I don't want to mention an individual or government official or any politician, but I'm just saying that some of the things that I saw seem to be very commonsensical to me. But some other one, I think that we need to have more dialogue. Let me give you one example, which maybe
because of time, maybe because of time. But I've understood you. Maybe the other question is why paying a visit in Tanzania this time around and not any other time?
No, there's no particular reason that I have to pay visit to Tanzania at that time. It can be any other time.
Okay.
The only reason is because I'm available now. Next year, after next year, I may be doing something else.
If it's about your availability, you could be available even last year or even 2 years ago.
Yeah,
or even next year. But why available this time?
There's no very specific or profound reason why. I could have done this 2 years ago. I could have gone to country A, not country B 2 years ago, and then reverse. But you have to do something, right? If I go to the supermarket now and buy something and then go to the shop to buy a pair of eyeglasses. Now, which one should I go first? Sometimes you just on your way to here and then you go to the supermarket and you buy something. Can you reverse that? You can reverse that, but there's no profound reason why I have to go to the shop to buy a pair of eyeglasses first and then go to the supermarket later. I can go either way. I can go do both.
Well, I know paying a visit to more than 100 countries is not an easy way. It is costful, correct?
That's why I say there is a lot of sacrifice. It's not just about money. It's also about psychology. It's about stress. It's also about a lot of things that people do not know. But on the other hand, I am committed. See, I am committed to my passions of ideas and the human future. My life is to serve humanity. That's what I decided to do a long time ago. And I spend my life for scholarship to discover the truth, whatever it is, even though it is very difficult to discover. And I try to understand the human future and propose some new visions. So I'm willing to do anything to make that possible before my death.
Okay. If you were to be asked a question about the future of this world, maybe economically and politically, etc., and socially, how would you say?
In what way?
In economic aspect, in political aspect, and even in social aspect or cultural aspect. How would you say?
In Tanzania or in Africa? Or?
No, the whole. You can even just categorize, maybe in Africa, maybe Europe, etc.
Yeah, but by the way, this is a very big question because you talk about politics, economic, and social, but each of them have different answers. For example, in my publication on economics, I make the prediction that that capitalism, as we understand that, will not survive. It will not last. It will be replaced by a new form of economic system, and I call that post capitalism, in which I propose different versions. In the book on democracy, I also propose that democracy, as we understand that, will not last. It will be replaced by new political system I call the post-democracy. And in the case of regions that you just mentioned, I also said that in the coming decades to come, you will see more and more some of the fundamental transformation of the geopolitical orders. China and India, for example, become more and more important internationally. They will become what I call the hyper-empires. And the US and the EU, for example, will decline to the second rank of the Meso empires. The Middle East and the Latin American, for example, they will become what I call the micro empires. And some of the regions. So each issue will have a different solution and different challenges and solution. There's no one size fits all solution.
Well, in the very beginning of our interview, you said something that actually shocked me as well, to the extent of calling you like maybe you are like a prophet. You say that many years back, just after the Cold War, you say that China will replace America and be the superpower. What compelled you to come up with such a statement, such a prediction? What did you see? Just briefly, because of time.
Yes.
Just 30 seconds.
Briefly. At that time, I don't just look into China. I look into many other issues, and I saw a lot of fundamental forces coming up, and it came to my realization that in terms of the economic, cultural, natural, and mental causes, China has met all the requirements of that category. And that's why I said that China has the best chance to come up with that dominance. But I also mentioned other powers too. Okay. India will be the next.
Okay, India will be. Your very last remark, just 10 seconds, because time is not our best tonight.
Maybe to follow up your question very quickly, I do think that there will be the rise of Africa.
There will be a rise of Africa.
Yes, but the rise of Africa, that's my prediction, will be linked to the rise of China.
Okay, so there will be
that's
the rise.
Very important.
There will be the rise of Africa, and when talking of Africa,
because
you
what
also
China
talk of
has
Tanzania.
done in Africa is something that Africans have not seen for more than a few hundred years. No other power in the last 500 years have ever treated Africa in the way that China has done for you. I think you should be very glad about this. And this, by the way, my prediction is that in the next few decades, you will see that Africa will rise more and more. But that's also importantly because of China.
Well, Africa will rise more and more, and hopefully Tanzania as well, because Tanzania is one of the countries, comprising Africa. Well, with this remark from Professor Dr. Peter Baofu, then we've come to the end of today's Face the Mic program. Just to remind you today, I had with me here Professor Dr. Peter Baofu, an American scholar and writer, doctor and professor. Thank you very much for
Thank you for
being
inviting
here.
me.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
My name is Deo Salufu. Much thanks to you, my listener out there, for being with me all the way from the start to the end. See you next time. See you next Friday. Coming up next is News Bulletin right here on TBC International 95.3 FM. Bye for now and stay tuned.
Whether it is social, economic, political, and cultural issues, there are things need to be addressed.
Give me the good news.
Get the first-hand interview from your favorite politicians, entrepreneurs, musicians, actors, businessmen, everyone and anyone that matters in the society. Well, face the mic and spill out the beans. Every Friday at 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. Face the mic only on TBC International 95.3 FM. And keep it real.
Tune in to TBC